want your apology. I want my scroll. What? Where is it?
OCs, or original characters, are defined as being fictional persons or creatures created by someone to meet some creative or artistic endeavor. Very often these characters have identifiable traits and qualities that are invoked to make the character more unique and interesting. In truth, most people online who are artists have an OC of a kind. Artists you follow or friends you have who also draw likely have characters of their own that they continuously develop and add to over time. It's an incredibly common phenomena, and it makes sense. Having characters that are your own that you can create and design plays on such a fundamental aspect of artistic expression. In fact, having an OC is so commonplace that there are literally websites dedicated solely to storing and sharing your original characters with other artists. But what if I told you that some people just don't have OCs? I made a poll relatively recently where I asked people to reveal whether they have OCs and how many they have currently. Out of the 4 options displayed, where 3 asked about how many OCs you have if you have any, there were about 12% of people who simply said they had 0 OCs to their name.
What? Oh no, see, that's what we not about to do. Police!
In contrast, by the way, those who had between 1 and 10 and more than 20 OCs were both neck and neck with 39% each. As someone who very rarely actually makes OCs himself, because I don't really gain much from it, I'm actually so stunned by how many OCs some people have on their roster. There was one dude who said he had like more than 200 or something, and I'm like, there's no, that's impossible. You have an entire NFL stadium full of OCs. Of course, some people have been creating and adding to their characters for years, but still, this difference between people like me who aren't really interested in making OCs and people who almost obsessively seem to spawn a new character every 5 minutes seems so fascinating to me. So today I want to cover the potential differences that arise between these two categories of artists and how these differences may manifest in the art forms they find themselves drawn to. So let's get started. Okay. First off, let me be very clear. When I'm talking about artists with no OCs, I'm specifically talking about people who don't have the same kind of interest or value in creating characters to that degree. There are perhaps some artists that don't currently have OCs, but are still very interested in creating them. They just haven't gotten around to it yet, I suppose. In order to understand the differences between OC artists and OC-less artists, I don't know, we should first cover what reason people have to even create OCs to begin with, what purpose do they actually serve, and what might this tell us about the people who engage with it. Interestingly enough, there's this comment I found on DeviantArt from like 2015 that actually breaks this dynamic down in a way that made sense for me. I actually think OCs are kind of a symptom of when artists are also writers or story makers. If you're not currently really interested in making stories, then it's normal to not have OCs. On the other hand, some people, like me, get into drawing because we want to be able to draw our characters or story ideas. Artists like that will obviously have them, and often a lot. There's some middle ground, but anyways, that's my theory. I want you to consider how often you see OCs, and then consider how often they tend to have a backstory and lore attached to them. More than likely, people who have OCs also have an underlying understanding of that character's personal traits, and the makeup of the world they exist in. It's quite unlikely to find an OC that isn't accompanied by background info relating to their childhood, their relationships, their powers, abilities, personality, the world they grow up in. What's more, OCs very rarely exist in an exclusive manner. Of course, some artists might have their favorite OCs, but it's not uncommon for a whole cast of characters to exist simultaneously to one another. Having 2, 3, or more OCs is important and common because it highlights how certain OCs may react to other OCs. And this illustrates interpersonal relationships and interactions in a way that further fleshes out the mannerisms and behavioral traits of these characters. Artists who have OCs tend to enjoy externalizing their expression and experimenting with various aspects of experience. For OC artists, what this also seems to entail is kind of a personal investment in these characters, you know? An intrinsic connection and understanding with the figures that leads to an expansion of their original idea. These artists don't just create their characters and then be done with it. There's a longer, more invested goal in continuously adding to and adjusting these concepts, leading to characters that are much more nuanced and individualistic than their original creation. The design of a character, like how they look visually, and the nature of a character, how they actually are both incredibly important aspects of the OC creative process. Though the relationship between these two elements can differ, obviously. Some people, for example, may create the look of a character first, inferring their personality and background as a product of how they appear afterwards. Others may begin with the idea first, initially, already knowing how they want the character to act and behave, and what the nature of that character is before ever getting into the visual stage. For either order, artists who enjoy creating OCs find great comfort in using these characters as a vehicle to explain or represent themes or experiences that exceed the character itself. Okay, sure. So we understand the artists who have OCs, but what about those who don't, right? Obviously, people are people and can't be unified by singular categories or motivations. Not everyone without an OC will think this way or act this way, but perhaps we can still shed some light on this minority of artists nonetheless. Unlike artists who enjoy creating OCs, those without them tend to find value in other creative ventures. For some, the process of drawing or engaging in the art form itself is sufficient enough. Creating an OC with an explainable backstory or motivation needn't be the goal. In fact, there might literally be no identifiable character traits outside of the visual for some artists. Speaking from personal experience, okay, I can spend hours creating and designing like random characters, but there exists no motivation for me to give them names, for instance, or give them like powers or personalities or anything. Quite literally, the rote process of drawing is the thing that provides the value for me. I enjoy watching a piece come together on a canvas or on a page as I work, and that alone is the thing that motivates me to draw. I'm significantly more interested in the prospect of getting better at drawing something, really anything, which will cause me to try to expand or improve upon my current process. I maybe have 3 characters I've assigned names to, and that's it, simply because I like their design so much. Like, I've drawn them several times over the years, and eventually I just assign them a name because of how often I depict them. But I don't really have, like, extensive world in my mind that surrounds the character. I haven't considered their background or their personality, really. I just like drawing them over and over. For artists without OCs, it's likely they enjoy more traditional art. So painting portraits or landscapes, copying the look of a figure onto paper, experimenting more perhaps with different mediums like watercolor or acrylic, broadening and enhancing the very process of the art they engage in. This isn't to say these artists dislike OCs, but that their appetite is satiated by different artistic pursuits. It might also be that these artists do, in fact, love world building, but they express it through moments rather than through characters. For instance, they may depict worlds or fictional landscapes with characters in them, but the focus is not on the characters themselves as unique elements of the piece, but as an additive quality of the overall feeling and emotion of a moment or a location within that world. There are tons of ways to describe the differences between the OC artist and the OC-less artist. For me, I describe it as the technical versus the narrative, sort of. Artists with OCs enjoy adding to a story in their mind, where the character's traits are constantly mixing with and enhancing the idea of the world itself. It sort of leads to a feedback loop where the world impacts the character, and the character then impacts the world. This creates an eventual narrative that arises organically and becomes self-generating, in a sense. For the OC-less artist, the technical is what brings the most enjoyment. Focusing on the how something is created and the process involved is sometimes just as important, if not more so, than the what that is being depicted. Characters aren't ignored per se, but are also not the primary focus. Now, I don't know if any of this made sense, or if any of these even resonated with you. Like, you could be someone with not a single OC and just be like, nah, you're stupid. What you said is stupid. And that's possible, which is why I'm curious to hear if there are any of you that feels like they fall into one category or another. I'd really like to know. Leave a comment, drop a like, do a backflip, And I'm out of here. Bye.